Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Stova Masterclass Event Builder Part 2, a deep dive into the registration module of Stova. I am Steve McGillivray. I work in the Office of University Events and Protocol here at Arizona State University. So today was a continuation from the last week's class, part one, where we began to build an event registration site. And we're taking the time to go through as many features and options that Stova has in the registration module and really get you a thorough understanding of all the different things you can do in Stova. So just a reminder, if you weren't with us last week, this is the event we are building out or continuing to build out today, a big multi-day, multi-session conference to a worldwide audience. The audience is comprised of attendees to this conference, but also the exhibitors and sponsors and staff. And we will be offering, again, multi-day, multi-sessions. And so we'll be focusing today on creating the form that attendees will fill out during the registration process. We'll be talking about these things called account level versus event level fields. We'll show you how to add questions and the different types of questions that you can use in a form. And we'll also touch on conditional questions. So if somebody answers one question and you need a follow-up, there is a way for you to ask a follow-up question. We'll also be dealing with agenda and options, a way to ask your attendees which sessions they are attending, a way to promote speakers for the different sessions, also to list locations for either use in an agenda that you're promoting or for a mobile app. And we'll also show you some ways to set up for selling merchandise. So that's what's on tap today. It looks like a small outline. However, there's a lot to talk about in those two tabs. So it's a couple of housekeeping things before we begin. First, yes, this session is being recorded, and the session will be shared with you in an email tomorrow after Zoom's done its processing, and so has YouTube. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. And then just a notice that as we go through the process and go through the system, you may notice some other terms besides Stova. You may see Eventry or maybe even eTouches. Those are the names that the company used to go under, and now it goes by Stova, but they're still in the process of updating those terms for their branding. So don't be alarmed if you see any of those terms. They're all the same platform we have been using at ASU for the last 6 or so years. Okay? So as we go along, if I have gone too fast for you or you have a question for the section we are dealing with, feel free to either post a question in the chat or just unmute your microphone and ask. But there will be time at the end as well for questions on anything we've covered today or anything Stova related. Okay, so let's dive in. So as usual, I'm going to start by logging into my user account. I've gone to the ASU support site, stova.asu.edu, and it's asking for my ASU rights. As I've been in here before, I don't see the ASU login screen, so here we are. Cloud level, I want to find my event. I have to go into my team folder. And if I was to click on the event name, I would go right into the overview page. But if I right click here on this, I get some other options. I can go right into my registration settings, which is where we want to be today, which I think is pretty cool. Little pro tip there. So previously on Masterclass Event Builder 1, we set up the basic event details with the date, time and dates of the actual event and the location. And we also created some categories for the different folks who are going to be using this registration form. We're having everyone who is associated with this event register through this site. And we did that by creating these different categories. General admission for normal attendees, a couple of categories for exhibitors, for sponsors, and for staffs. And we'll be using those categories today and in the next master class for visibility settings and how much people pay and things like that. So today we're going to focus on the Attendee Info tab. I'm going to go to Active Questions. And the first thing I want to bring to your attention, which is kind of the most important thing about this system, is you'll see some questions that have the little blue monitor icon next to it or on its row, and you have some fields that have nothing, and that means something to the system. Fields that have the little monitor icon are known as account level or system level fields. So these are fields that are putting data into the big Stova database on the ASU account. And it's also using those fields for a couple of very specific purposes. So for example, with the email address field, the system knows what to send the confirmation email and other emails to whatever address is in that field, account level. Email address field is not a field that you would be able to designate, tell the system which to use. The system will always use this, okay? Now, account level fields are things you don't want to mess with too much because they can affect everyone at ASU. What happens is if a person registers at another event in some other unit and they've already registered once in Stova, once they enter their email address, the system may try to pre-populate that registration site for that event with whatever data it finds. So if you mess up account level fields here, you're going to affect other ASU users. Now, having said that, making some changes are perfectly fine. For example, perhaps using the title field, the label of title is not what my audience expect. Perhaps they expect something like job title. That's fine. I can go into that field, just click Edit. I can change the label to job title, hit Save and Exit, and the label of the field is changed. What's important is I have not changed the intent. This is the data this field expects to see is a job title or a title, and I haven't changed that intent. If you want to know what the intent of a account level field is, simply hold your mouse over that blue icon and it will tell you what the system expects to see. However, what I would not do is I would not take an account level field and change it to something it does not expect to see. For example, I wouldn't change company and organization to what's your favorite color, red, green, or blue. That would change the intent of the account level field, okay? That's the no-no. So that's the difference, account level field versus, and the event level fields are those that don't have the blue icon. And you can create as many of those fields as you like. They'll be restricted to this event registration site, but they'll be able to collect the data you want for your event. So how do I add those questions? Well, you click the Add Question button and then type in what your question is. So for my purposes, I want to add a couple of fields to my registration for our exhibitors and our sponsors. So I'm going to ask them to give me a description of their company. Now, if you noticed when I edited the title, there was some formatting, some HTML formatting going on there, and I want to keep going with that. So under the question fields, you'll see the usual HTML content button, means this is an HTML field, and this is how I can change the formatting of what that label will look like. So I'm going to do that. It was a simple boldface. Here again, we see a short name field, so that if you have a very long question here for your attendees, remember that the question will show in your reports with that long name. If you would like to use a abbreviation or something that your team will know what that answer is in the reports, you can add that here for description. I don't need to, but a short name will override whatever the question is and show up on your reports, just FYI. Again, we're diving in deep. Question reference, that's just an internal data or number. That's just for your team. And a reminder that if you ever have a question of what a Stova field is for, simply hold your mouse over the question mark and it will let you know what the purpose is. Most of the time, it's a pretty good description. Question footer is a section of text that can show up below the question on your forms, but frankly, I have found it easiest just to put all my text in the question field because, again, I can format it. It makes it a bit more compact on the form, I have found. So as a general rule, I skip the footer and just put everything I want here and format it as I like to see it. So down here, under Page Format and Validation, I select where this field can appear. It defaulted to the Welcome page because I clicked the button in the Welcome page section. There was a button underneath the Attendee Info page section that I would have clicked, and it would have selected that for me. And that's actually where I want this question to appear, not on the Welcome page, but on some other page. And notice here that there are lots of other pages that you can save an Attendee Info field to. Well, why would you do that? Well, if you just want to provide some instructions to folks on the agenda page or the options page or the payment page, this is one way you could leave that text and have it appear. This is one of a couple of ways you can do it in the system. And for my purposes, I want the Attendee Info page. And next we select the input type. Hitting no input just means straight text. Useful for instructions or making a break in the page itself as a header. But if I click on this field, I get to see all the options available for questions, such as single line of text, like for a short answer, first name, last name, something like that. Multiple lines of text if you need an essay or an extended answer, you can use that. If you have a question just as a yes or no answer, you could use the single session checkbox, just a binary yes, checked, it means yes, left unchecked is no. Multiple checkboxes is if you have a number of options and people can check all that apply. And this will allow them to check more than one option box. You have date fields, you can use time fields. You also can allow folks to upload files or upload images. I'm going to use upload images in a moment here. And then there's drop-down box and radio buttons. Those last two are for allowing options, but only letting people select one from a list. Okay. You can switch between types. You may or may not lose data just if you change your mind later. If I switch from a drop-down box to radio buttons, I wouldn't lose my options. I wouldn't lose any data because they're pretty much the same. But if you go from a drop-down box to a line of text, you will lose some programming. Just FYI. Again, I'm doing a description field, so I just want the multi-lines of text. Once I select an input, these fields will adjust to tell me some options I may have. So I generally leave the position text and input width, whatever the default is showing. But I can decide how big of a box for description I'm showing here. And I can say what can the attendee put in that box. And I do have some ways to restrict what data is. For a text field or for a description field, I think I'll let them put anything they like. But if I don't want anything, too wordy, I can limit how many characters or words or digits somebody can put in this field. So I'm just going to keep it maximum of 100 words, let's say. Again, I'm thinking of sponsors and for exhibitors. Shouldn't have to tell me too much. All right. Next, we have visibility settings, and this is your way of controlling who sees this question based on the following. Categories is first. You can also use it by user type. The public users, again, are the attendees, and the admin users are you. So if you need to put some information in an attendee profile and only you or your team should see it, this is a way to create a field and turn off public users so that the attendees can't see it, but you and your team can use it for information. Another visibility option is for new registrants versus modifying registrants. If you have enabled the modify registration permissions, which we talked about in Event Builder Part 1, you can leave different messages based on if it's the first time they're in the system or if they're returning to modify their registrations. And finally, primary registrant versus additional registrants. This is connected to the group booking feature, which we do have enabled on this event. The primary registrant is the first person in, and the additional attendees are anyone they've added to their registrations. Okay, so there's a way to leave different messages or ask different questions of those types of folks. For my purposes, I am going to, you don't see any boxes here because the all categories is checked, which is showing this field to everyone. I don't want that. I'm going to uncheck that box. Now I see check boxes for all categories, and this is just going to be for my exhibitor vendor and for my sponsors. Okay, now this blanked out because this applies to all those subcategories. That's what these are. Gold levels are the subcategories of the sponsor category. So this applies to all the subs. Exhibitor vendor category I'm going to use to collect information about the company, and the exhibitor is the name of the rep. And they don't have to tell me about their company. I'm going to get that from that first category. Okay. Moving on. So here are some more advanced settings that you can use for questions. Is there anything that's changed here according to the attendee category? If there's a default value. So I have used this for an event password to be used for mobile apps or a virtual, the virtual system, because oftentimes I want to give people a common password so it's easy for them to log in to those systems. So what I will do is create a field that they can't see but adds data to their profile, and I'll put in the default value. I'll put in that common password. And so every time somebody creates a registration, that data is pre-populated. If you want to display the answer to this question, say in an email to these folks, you can create a custom merge code just simply by selecting this and selecting one of these. I think you get up to 50 custom merge code, and then you would use that merge code in the email. Once you use a custom merge code, it will not be available to any other questions. So if I selected custom one here and went on to make another field that I wanted to use a custom merge code, I could not see one in the list. The system is that smart. So that's what that is for. Next, you decide if you want this information to display on the payment page, which is the last page people see. It's also called the registration record. And you want them to see on the confirmation pages, or again, the registration record. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. This is how you decide what shows up on those last few pages. You can decide if whatever is entered here is also entered into the same field for every member of the group in a group booking. You can decide if this needs to be capitalized. Do you want to control the data output? Here are your choices. You can capitalize the first letter, lowercase, all except to capitalize the first letter, blah, blah, blah. I just usually go with the defaults. Number of times that a single response to this question can be used. That field can actually be very handy for limiting duplicate registrations. If you go into the email address field, that account level field, and you entered the number 1 in that field and saved it, people would only be able to make a registration with that email address once. If they try to make another one with the same email address, they'll get an error message. Now, it doesn't stop them from creating another registration with a different email address, but it will help you reduce duplications of registrations. The last thing is, if this field was being used for websites and you want to, you can allow the URLs and email addresses to immediately become clickable links. Nice little option. Okay, so my first field is ready to be saved, and it's been added to the bottom of my list here. Okay. It says partial because I determined which categories would see this. If in this column, which is the visible column, if this has a checkbox, that means all categories can see it. So let me just go through here and see if there's anything I want to turn off for my purposes. You'll notice next to visible is the required field, so I have a ability here to decide which gets to be seen and which must be required for the attendee to fill out. Yeah, I think those are fine. So I want to create a couple more fields for my purposes. I'm going to add a logo, and I won't worry about formatting this time. And I want to use this just to show you that, again, when you select a certain type of field, you're going to get new specifications that you can turn on. So for an upload file or an upload image, you can decide which file types you're going to allow. You can set a minimum, which is a good idea, to make sure you're not getting images off the internet which are too small. If there's a general rule, I think 640 is a good minimum. But I won't worry about a maximum size, so as long as it's bigger than 640 in pixels, by the way, they'll be able to upload without an error. I can decide if they should be allowed to crop when they upload. I find this usually confuses people, but it's there if you want it. This is another handy feature, this file. If you want files to be named when they're uploaded, image files, you can determine what those names are by using merge fields. They give you the merge fields view button. Oh, it popped up on a different screen. Let's get that a little smaller. See if I can get that a little smaller. All right. Oh, and you are not playing nice with me today. I've got a couple of monitor issues here. All right, let's do that. So what do I want to find? Let's find a name field. I don't need event name and not billing name. Oh, there we go. Let's get a first name field. And I actually know that the last name field is just L name. So now when they upload an image, it'll have their first name, last name attached to that file. So when I download them, that'll be easier for me to sort. In fact, if I want to be even fancier, I could do it like that. That way I can do a last name sort. Lovely. Okay. Again, I don't need an image for everyone. I just need it for the exhibitors and for the sponsors. And that's good to go there. Now, if I want to, I could also clone a field by hitting the clone button. Yes, I'm sure I want to clone it. But I don't want logo. This time I want a website. Change that to just a single line of text should be good enough for that. I don't think they have a validator for websites. That's fine. But by cloning it, I've kept the same visibility settings, which is just what I want. And this time I am going to turn on the automatic URL feature. Lovely. Okay. Now I can also adjust visibility settings in my account level field. So for example, I don't need to know the company name and the address for the exhibitor reps. I can go in there and again just use visibility settings to say, okay, I do want them and that and that. Again, I don't need to know staff either. And I can also move forward to the next field just by using next question or previous question. So I can finish these kind of things very quickly. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, one last question I want to make just to show you how it works, because we often get a request for how do you get dietary restrictions and follow-up questions or conditional questions. So I'm going to add a question for dietary restrictions. And this time it's going to be a multi-select drop-down box. I can get a conditional question from drop-down boxes and radio buttons. Once I select one of those, I can hit the specify options, and what exactly are those options. I can enter those options, onesie, twosie, click adding that here. If I need to add just a single option, I could click this button. I could also copy and paste multiple options, which I'm going to do here. And what's my code for that? Isn't it? Yeah. I'm not a fast typer. I just have a little utility that will paste things in for me. Now, because I have one option already here, I am going to use the overwrite feature so that that is written over. It's warning me about that because if I'm doing this after I've already programmed something, I'm erasing data or could be erasing data. So I hit save, and there it's populated my options. If I want to move questions around or the order of questions around, I can do that by clicking on the dotted sidebar there and then just moving things however I like. Okay, my options are complete. I'm going to hit save and exit. Now, we're going to restrict this for the exhibitors, sponsors, and maybe we're feeding the staff. Okay. Now here I have the conditional questions section. So my follow-up question will be, if the answer is other, I would like them to explain what they need. Just like every other question field, I have to put in a question, I have a short name option, and I have to select what the format of the question is. We'll give them a little extra text box, but I'll make it a smaller text box. It could be multi-line, and people can write beyond the 3 lines. This is just focusing on display. And we're going to call that good. Okay, now I can make more than one conditional question. If one of those other options required a follow-up, I could program those here. Okay. Okay, just checking my outline here. As I said before, now let's talk about some of this. There are some specially programmed fields I want to bring to your attention. Stova has some specially programmed fields, and you're free to use these. One of them is this, the CC email field. That's actually its short name, but this is a field that allows you to have an email field for a copy of the registration site. So you already got the email address for the attendee, but if you want to allow someone to send a copy of that registration to themselves or to somebody else in their organization, you can use this, the CC email field. Okay, don't confuse it with any other type of email. It's just for a blind copy. So when an admin assist is submitting a registration for their supervisor and they want to get a copy so they make sure it gets in their calendar, that kind of idea. Okay, so that's one special Stova field. Another is on the inactive questions page. There are many account level fields on the inactive questions page just to make this active questions as a cleaner page. And you're free again to use these on the inactive questions. One of the program ones, and we don't recommend you use it, but we just wanted to point it out that it's very special, is the verify email address field. That field is simply a duplication of the email address field, and its purpose is just to give your attendee a chance to look at the 2 fields and make sure that the email address is correct. It is not, repeat, not a match field kind of system. And the reason we have hinted it back here in the inactive questions dungeon is because some units mistakenly think it's just your ordinary everyday email address field and use it for other purposes. But what they don't realize is that if you have someone register with the email address field, go into the registration site and they see verify email address, they can change that email address and it changes the email address of the attendee's account. So we had a situation where a unit wanted to restrict access based on the asu.edu domain, which you can do. People logged in with their ASU email address, and once inside, they saw this field and they changed it to their Gmail account. And the client was wondering, well, how are they getting past the block and giving us Gmail accounts? Well, that's why you had enabled the verify email address field and you let them use it. So we have moved that to inactive questions just to avoid trouble, but the reason I mention it is in case you are using older registration sites that you are cloning and you may still see that. Again, to check the intent of a field, hold your mouse over that blue icon and you'll see what it's for. If it says verify email address, back away slowly. Just move that out of the way. There are also some ASU-specific account level fields we have programmed, and many of those are also on the inactive page. College, department, campus, mail codes, ASU rights, you get the idea and you see them here. And you're welcome to use any of these as account level fields. You can also just make event level fields, but just FYI, you are free to use these as well. For my purposes, what do I have here that I'd like to use? And if it says do not use them, okay? All right, I think I've got all the things I want, but let's add the mail code field to our registration. To do that, you simply hit edit, and the inactive tab is one of those pages where you can move fields from the active tab to the inactive questions, or as I'm doing here, moving inactive questions to another part of the system. Lovely. Now if I go back to active questions, I can see it. It's usually at the bottom. Yep. And again, as I said, if you want to move fields around, you can do that. Simply click, hold, and drag to wherever you want them to be seen. Now I do not have this turned on visibility wise, so just be aware of that. I will turn this on. Actually, before I go into edit, anytime you make a change, good idea to hit save and stay. Let's say for this one, I'm just going to show this to the staff. And I'll call that good. Okay. Oh, and one other thing, I mentioned moving fields around. So as a note, sometimes we get a request, is there a way to make a one-page registration form? Because right now, if I show you under preview events, right now, here is page 1 of my registration where they enter an email address and hit continue, and then they go to page 2 and start answering questions. Is there a way to make this a single page where all these fields are on and the email address field are on the same? Yes, there is. What you would need to do is you cannot move the email address from what's called the welcome page, but you can move the other fields to the welcome page. Exactly the same way I showed you with moving things between tabs or other pages. So simply pick a field that you want to move to the first page and then change the page here from Attendee Info to the welcome page, and do that for all fields you want to see. And of course I have this right now not visible, that you want to see as a one page. The only consequence of that is, if you remember, I said that the account level fields can be used by other units and registration sites. So if the email address field matches, it will pre-populate the attendee info fields. Well, if you've moved all your fields to this, the new welcome page or the new registration page, the system does not have the ability to look anything up because it needs that first step of an email address and continue button to be able to do that. So it's the only thing you're losing is that functionality of pre-populating your registration form. Okay, so I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what's going to happen. But for many people, they just want to make it as simple steps as possible. You know, another note I should make about Stova, and I've mentioned this, I try to mention this whenever possible. Stova is, I would call, a person-oriented registration site, right? Versus tickets, where you just want to know how many people are coming, give me a number, and we'll give you that many tickets. This is trying to make connections between people. That's why it asks for email addresses for every person, and that you're able to ask first name, last name, and all this information. Even in a group booking situation, you're asking about email addresses for everyone in the system. That's a feature, not a bug. It's trying to collect information on everybody. Okay. Okay, I've gone through, I think, everything I want to show on Attendee Info. Am I missing anything here? No. Oh, I guess a few things to mention. Yes, you can add page breaks to your registration site. What does that mean? Well, if you wanted to break up a registration form on the Attendee Info page, say you have a really long one, but if you don't want people to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you can add a page break. So what you will see is on that page, there'll be a series of tabs, and you decide what those different sections are on that page. So maybe the first page is contact information, and my follow-up page is, in fact, let me do it. My follow-up page will be, we call it, company info. Okay, there's my page break, and let me just put this before description and website. And dietary restrictions isn't going to be about the company. I want that to be about people, so I'll put that above my page break. Again, I'll hit save. And now if I go back to preview event, get a refresh, now hit the attendee info page. Not seeing that because I'm in general admission, but if I switch to exhibitors who have those other, oops, not showing up like I'd expect. No, not exhibitor, sorry, exhibitor vendor. Yeah, now I'm seeing those tabs. So some of my fields now are there. Just another way of controlling the flow of your registration system if you would like to use that feature. Okay. All right. I think that's it for the deep dive into attendee info. Are there any questions before I move on? Hang on a second. My computer is doing something strange on the other channel. There we go. Okay, not seeing any questions or hearing any questions. Quick review that I've showed you everything I want to show you here. And I'm reminded of one last thing, and then it's a Stova convention I want to tell you about. So you'll notice you can delete some fields. You have a trash can on the delete column. Some are blue, some are gray. Why is that? Well, you'll notice that the account level fields are always gray. You can't delete those. But these event level fields right now are blue, and I can delete them. But when I start accepting registrations and data gets in these fields will turn gray. The system will not allow me to delete fields if there is data inside the system. Okay, again, that's a feature, not a bug. So you can always change a registration site even after you've gone live, but just be aware of that. If you add a question after you've begun accepting registrations, how are you going to get that information from the people who registered? And if you're trying to change something drastic and you already have data in one field, you can't get rid of it. You can hide it. You can move it to inactive. You can make it invisible. But you can't delete it unless you delete all the data that is in that field in those registrations. Okay? Hope that is clear. All right, let's move on to agenda and sessions. Now, the only time to use the agenda section is if you need to know who is coming to your sessions. Say you have a room capacity limit for a bunch of different sessions and you just need to make sure you're not going over capacity. This is not a place where you would put the agenda to display only for your attendees. For that, you should use a web page, someplace that they can go back to, because once they leave the registration site, there's really no way to go back. Okay, so this is for collecting information, not for the display of information. So there are two ways to add sessions. The manual way is to click the Add Session button. And again, you've got some choices as to input type. Session no input, just like the input for headings in questions, you have a way to just put some text on the agenda page. This can be instructions or some graphic elements for making it look nice, your choice. You can also just put a session that's a yes, no question. Are you coming? Yes, no. It's a single checkbox. And if you're doing breakout sessions, right, they are sessions that are scheduled for the same time slot. You would use the multi-session, which provides radio buttons, and radio buttons, if you recall, are only for picking one of a list of options. Okay, so let me start off. I just lost a page here. Hang on a sec. I lost my notes. There we go. Okay, so this is what I'm building. First, we'll set up check-in, and check-in is just going to be time and place, right? And I'm doing this in May. And this there for a start time. The time field is going to give me a list to select. I'm going to start at 8:30, and we're going to finish check-in by 9:30. I could put a heading above this if I want to. Again, for this, I'm not going to bother. So check-in. Session type. If I need to categorize a session, I can. This has the ability to restrict people to sessions. So you can say I can't register for more than 5 workshops if I've got using this as a session type. I mean, that's its function. For my purposes, I don't need to use it. You can do a little bit of formatting here of the session title by using boldface and or italics. Session reference is an internal reference for you. Name for badge. So if you would like this to show up on a name badge that you print beforehand or at the check-in table, you can put that name in here and then tell the badge to print it. So if you're doing a lunch or a dinner and you just want people to know that they've already paid for it, you can have that appear, that kind of thing. And you can also put a description for the session here that will appear on the agenda. Certification credits, never really used that. I think that's more of an internal number. Tracks, so if you are doing an event where there could be tracks of classes. So in graphic design, we might see the web development track or the print track or the, et cetera, et cetera. You can use tracks to then designate which of these sessions are in a particular track. We've pre-programmed some tracks in here or upon request of units. Feel free to use any of these. If you need some design for your setup here, contact us and we can program them for you. That's something we do on the back end. If you're using tracks, you highlight the name here and then click add, so it's added over here. You can't have more than one track. Never use the PDF font colors, don't know what that's about, nor the key speaker, no orientation group, no program start date. Couldn't tell you what that's about. What I can tell you about is the preview session info and the edit session layout. Do I have a description field? I have one. So in Stova, if a field is blank, it doesn't display space. It displays nothing. But if you add data, then something appears. So I'm just going to put in some placeholder text for this session. I'm going to hit save and save to save it. So what will happen now is if I go to look at my session, because I've added description here, there'll be a more info link behind the description. People can click on that and see what I've written. Here is how you control what that looks like. Preview the session info page. Oh, you keep popping over to the ugly side. So that's what it looks like. I'm not going to resize this, just give you a quick look. So I've got, there's the description that's appearing that I've printed, giving me the name of the session. I haven't added a speaker yet, but it's expecting to see one here, and then my text. Okay. Now this is not what I want it to look like when they hit that more info button. That's what the button on the right is for. I can edit what that layout is, and you can see it's pulling in some merge code, a session name merge code, a speaker merge code, and the session description. So if I want to, I can edit this, and then all I will see is the name of the session and the description. Okay. Speaker details. So we need to add some speakers to the speakers tab before we see anything here to use. We'll do that in a moment. But notice we have more visibility settings. So you can use these to control what a person sees based on, again, categories, by user type, by new versus modifying, by primary versus additional guests, and this new option, or this additional option, I should say, for sessions based on a question. So you can have a session visible if you ask them a question on the Attendee Info page, and then select that question here and select what the answer would be that allows them to see this. Okay? So lots of different ways to control session visibility. Why would you use any of these? Well, let's, for example, suppose that you had a category for the executive committee, and you want to make sure the executive committee is signing up or knows when the sessions for their meetings are and that they can sign up for it. Then you would use categories to display that session just to the executive committee folks and not to anybody else. It's just one example. Okay. Do you want this displayed on the payment and confirmation pages? Do you want them to see all their sessions? I tend not to want to do that. I will give it to them in their event email. And here, session details open in a pop-up window. Now remember, I said that because I have an event description or a session description, there will be a more info link right after the session name. If I want that description to display without the pop-up need to click a link, I would disable this feature here, and then it would always display. Okay. And this right here is just controlling the width of that pop-up screen. You didn't see it because it went to my monitor, which defaults to full-size screen, but it's normally a 400 by 400 pixel window that pops up when I click that. Maybe I'll see that if I go to preview event. We'll see that in a minute. So if I want to see a bigger window, I can adjust that here. And lastly, a field just for internal notes for your team on this session. You're free to use it if you like. Okay, so this session is ready to go. Nothing special with check-in. Let's add another session. I can either click add session, or I can click clone or copy, which can be kind of handy since I'm just going to pick the next time. So I have a 9:30 start on this one and a 10:30 on this one. Now for this event, this is going to be for my welcome and keynote session. So this time I want to know if people are coming. So I'm going to select this as a single session checkbox, change the name to welcome and keynote. Yeah, it's kind of special, but I don't want any description here. Okay. Anything I usually change with it? No, not usually. All right. And then the last thing, I'm going to program my first breakout session, the multi-session. I'm going to hit clone again. I'm going to select multi-session, radio buttons. And this time we're going for 10:45 to noon. And notice how this has changed from multi-sessions. It took the session name from the thing I cloned, the welcome keynote, and put it into the first session. This is not what I want, obviously. So here I can just change this to my first session. I'm going to hit save and stay before I move on. Okay. And then to add additional sessions, I click add session. And it gives me what looks like something for a normal single session. That's by design. This one is this session, and I'm just going to add the names here quickly. Okay. Note that I can get back into these sessions to change any settings. I can change the names just at this level and then hit save and stay. But if I have details, tracks, speakers, eventually we'll see locations, I can go in there to edit. I can also clone what I've just done to create a new session. And of course, I can delete. Same thing here. Once you actually have people signing up for sessions, these trash cans are grayed out and you're no longer allowed to delete the session. Same thing with visibility settings that we had before. In fact, we're going to change this. I'm going to change this to just general admission. Exhibitors, sponsors don't need to worry about that for me. You can follow up a session with a conditional question. Now, even though you see a merge code here for a custom merge code, yes, you can use this, but there are merge codes already for putting an attendee's selections in an email. So you don't need to do that if that's your intention. There are some of those already exist, and we'll talk about those next Thursday when we talk about event emails. And again, the pop-up box here. All right, so now my multi-select is complete. What's it look like? Go to, now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'm going to bring it to your attention. Previously, we didn't have a select agenda page. Here's an option to look at because we had no sessions programmed. Now that we do, now it shows up on preview event. We can take a look at it. Okay, and so that's the different types and what they look like. Check-in again is the single session, no input, single checkbox, and the multi-checkbox. And as you can see, I can only select one. Okay. All right. And there you see that more info link. If I click it, nope, you're gonna, I don't know why it keeps popping up in the other monitor, which screws it up. Trust me, it just opens up usually on the same page as a 400 by 400 pixel window. Okay. Some other things of note in these sessions with checkboxes, I don't remember seeing them. Yeah, here we are. You have the additional option of capacity and wait lists. So here, if you have a room limit, or you just want to limit how many people can sign up for a particular session, this is how you do it. Set your maximum attendees, and like everything else in Stova, when you have a field that's going to close registration or prevent people from registering, you'll have a message field behind it, so you can say, you know, we have sold out. If you leave it blank, it's unlimited registrations for that session. But here's the thing. Enable waitlist for this session. So if you were here last week, we talked about waitlisting for the event and the category level. Okay. This is for session waitlisting where people can sign up. And this is very different from the event and category waitlisting under Event Info waitlist. This system is totally manual. The event and category waitlisting can be an automatic process where if somebody cancels, the next person who signed up on the wait list can be sent an email and offered to register, yada, yada, yada. This isn't that. This is a totally manual process where I call this just filling seats with butts feature. Okay, I would not get too hung up on this. When you have an opening, you will have to contact that attendee and offer them a seat, and then manually add them. Now, what can happen with this system is if somebody cancels and the seat clears in a session, and some new registrant comes in and sees that session open, they can select it even if there are people on the wait list. This is why I say don't sweat this. I would just use this feature if you have a block of seats open because you've had a number of cancellations and it's getting close to the event, and you have the time to invite more people who are on the wait list to join. I would use it for that. I know some people would like this to be automatic. It's not. Just letting you know, it is manual. The other option is you can show how many seats are remaining. So if you think showing that number, oh, you've got 6 left, you've got 5 left, countdown feature might generate more interest in a session. You can enable that here. Here are your visibility settings again for categories and whatnot. And conditional question follow-up for that. Link sessions. So if you are creating sessions and you want a person who signs up for one session to be signed up actually for some other session. So maybe you're doing a webinar and you have a Q&A session immediately after, and you want the person who signs up for the webinar to automatically be signed up for the Q&A. This is how you would do it. You would be able to click link session and you would select which session this is linked to. So if the attendee just selects one of those sessions, they're automatically added to the other session or sessions. Merge codes available. Whether or not the session is checked by default is an option. Again, the pop-up window features. Okay. Now, the other way of adding sessions is by importing from a spreadsheet. It is a little tricky, and you'll want to follow these instructions very carefully. In fact, I suggest practicing before you use it on a site you're developing. Okay, click the Import and Export Sessions button, and it offers you the ability to download a template. Pretty good idea. Just click that and hit download. Okay, that's done. Where are you opening? Great. All right. And this is what you would get. Now we're seeing it has given me the sessions I've programmed. Okay, so this is also a way of updating session information. Let's see if I can make this a little smaller by collapsing these. Great. And if there is data in my event, it will give that session an ID number. When I'm adding sessions, there should be no ID number. That's how the system knows. It is updating a field if it sees an ID number. It is adding a session if there is no number. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is back on import sessions. Follow these instructions very carefully. Can I zoom in there? Great. This is what trips people up, is setting up that spreadsheet the way it needs to be for the system to understand what you are doing. First, notice the date format should be in this style, not what they showed you or what came out of the system here. Okay, you'll have to, if you're going to re-import this, be sure you reformat those dates. Start time in that format. It's a 24-hour clock. But here's the trickiest part, and this is what trips people up. The combination of type and session number means something to the system, okay? And it spells it out here. So the single session no input, the text only, is a type 3, and the session number is always a 1. The single session checkbox, a yes/no answer, is a type 2, also only with session number 1. But a multi-session is a type 1, and the session number is numerical for how many sessions are programmed at the same time. Okay? That's what trips people up. Do not be like the client who just thought, oh, I'll just number these 1 through 14 for all the sessions I have. No, 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 no. That will break your registration site. That will not work. You need to set only the multi-sessions for the 1, 2, 3 of however many sessions are going to be in there. Okay? That's why I say practice with this one before you commit. Then when you are ready, when your spreadsheet is ready, then you're able to upload. Defaults to this date format. Find your spreadsheet. Now I have a different spreadsheet I will find. There we go. And then hit upload session and give it a time, because it's checking its system, it's validating fields, and then it will give you this message. So the spreadsheet I used had 25 new and had no updates to anything I was working on. Lovely. Now I can hit close, and here they all are. Oh, but this was an old spreadsheet, and it has the old dates on it. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a way that I could bulk update these sessions? Well, there is. First, I'm going to hit save and stay from the work I have done, and now I see this new tool, the date adjustment tool, and now I can look at all these sessions based on these dates and times. I just need to change the dates to what, let's see, I gotta get a different spreadsheet so I don't have to scroll so much, because I'm in 2024 May. This is day 1. Let's see if I can do this a little faster. Here we go. You are there. You are day 3. Now it says day 4, but that's my first date of my site, so that I'm not going to change those at all. I could change the whole start date, end date thing here if I wanted to. By the way, if I was to clone this event for a future conference, this page would pop up first thing. It's asking me, do you want to change times and dates of your sessions from the previous event? So that's where you will see this again. Everything should be good. So let me hit save and stay, and then I'll be able to check. Okay, on the 15th, that all looks right. That all looks right. And that all looks right. Lovely. Now I can go back to the session list, and it's still ordered the way it was when I left it last. I can come down here, and anytime I add a session to a new time and date, I can use this feature to resort this display, and it'll look at dates and times and reorder everything. Lovely. Now, some things that do not come over when you do an import, it's just information. So none of the formatting I did up here can be done through the spreadsheet. I'm going to have to go through all these different sessions to change that if that's important to me. Okay. But yeah, you can do a lot with importing and updating through a spreadsheet. Okay. You also have the ability down here to restrict how many people or how many sessions a person can sign up for. You can do it based on categories. You can do it based on those session types. Remember we said session types, and I showed you that long list. This is how you can say, okay, you can only do a limited number of workshops. Okay, so you can set limits for folks based on categories and for session types. And as a preventative, you can make sure if you are somehow offering like multiple single session checkboxes in there for the same date and time, you can prevent people from signing up for that just because they're not paying attention. Okay, so that's agenda and sessions. Next, I want to add speakers. And to add speakers, again, 2 ways to do it. Add speaker. Gives you these fields. And what you're doing is actually creating a speaker profile that people are able to see the details of a speaker or presenter. Names, obviously, but you can provide also an image that displays. You can provide company information or a bio here. Okay, just like you could show what the display of the session is like, you can edit the layout of what the speaker profile looks like. And if I was ready to start assigning sessions to a person, I can do that inside here. Let me just hit save and stay before I do. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Lovely. So this is one way to add a speaker to a session from within inside their speaker profile. So maybe I'm going to be the keynote speaker. Lovely. The other way is you can also import speakers from a spreadsheet. The import-export speakers function is the way. Once again, it's going to give you a template that you can download. And these are the fields inside the display that you can, or in the profile that you can download. Same thing, if you have existing speakers, they're going to have a system ID. And if you want to edit that speaker, you can. If you're adding new speakers, leave that system ID field empty. And just so some of the things you can see here, you're not going to be able to select the sessions the speaker's in. You're just adding that information. Once again, I have a spreadsheet ready to go, ready to upload. That was pretty quick. 20 extra speakers added. Lovely. Okay, I can still go in there and edit them, or I can copy them if I needed to, or I can delete them. Say I have again, I've cloned an old event and I just need to remove some of the speakers who are not doing anything for this event. Lovely. The other way of adding a speaker is from within the session. So let's pick a session here and go into edit. And now that I've added sessions, or I've added speakers, now I'm seeing a way to add speakers to this session. Before it was blank. So assign speakers, I can do that by just doing a name search, or if I'm adding multiple speakers, I can click here to see a list and add more than one. So we'll add this here to the session. It will also make a notation on the speaker's profile that they are a presenter of this particular session. Okay. The next tab, location. So if you want to tell people where these different sessions are, you can do that. You need to add the locations. This is only a manual process. There is just no other way to do it. And again, I've got some little quick tips. Maximum occupancy field is just a notation for you. It does not have any function in the system. And again, notes, it's an internal note for your team. So it's just a onesie twosie. Okay. Just going to add a couple here as quickly as I can. I wish they would give us a spreadsheet upload for this, because it'd be a lot faster. All right, that's probably enough to start for demo purposes. And again, because I've added locations, now I can go back to agenda sessions, pick a session. And now I have a session location field. This wasn't here before, if you remember. I went from session name to session type. Now I actually have some data in that section. I can click the pull down here, and the keynote and welcome will be in this room. Lovely. Okay, and now that will show up on my agenda and also places like the mobile app if I'm using that feature. Okay. Last thing I want to show you here is the options in merchandise. So you can use this, as the name implies, for merchandise. If there are things you want to sell and you've been unable to put it anyplace else, this is one place you can put a session and add a, or not a session, but an option, and put a price on it. You can put prices on three things: categories, the event, categories, sessions, and these options. So for my event here, I'm going to offer folks t-shirts. And I have a couple of choices. Again, option types. What can I do? I can do a simple yes, no checkbox. Choice, I can do a radio button selection, pick one of these options. I can also sell quantities. So if I wanted to sell as many shirts as I want for every different size, I could do that with this options field. And another heading, no input, just if I want to put some text. So for shirts, I'm going to limit to one shirt per person. So I'm going to use the multi option. And we'll just call this the t-shirts. Again, I could format that if I want to. Here I just have to manually add as many options as I want. Oh, cute. But you see, I have some other things I can do. I can put this on the name badge if I want to make it easy for the, maybe they prepay for t-shirts and they just have to go to the merch table to pick it up. Fine. Option reference is just another internal name. If you need to describe what it is you're selling, you can do that with the description field. If you need to limit how many you're selling, you can set a maximum here, so you don't go outside your inventory. Not going to do that here for mediums, but I could. And again, I could show the number of remaining. I don't know if you saw that. I'm going to add another option here for large. Thank you. I can also format these options a bit. So if I want to see them, and rather than the stacked order, if I want to see them in columns, I can do that here by making this option. Wait a minute. Where did I see that? Oh, there it is. Move option to the top of a new column. That's what I was looking for. And one more. All right, I can use visibility to show these to certain people, and these t-shirts are just for sale by the audience. But here are some other visibility settings. You should be becoming familiar with these. I can follow up and order an option with a follow-up question. Okay, again, I can use a merge code if I want to put this in the email confirmation, and a way to deal with the pop-ups. If I have a session description or an option description, once again, there'll be a more info link, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Let's do another option here, but use the quantity field this time, because there are some things special about that. This will be for the Expo guide. And I got a little formatting I can do. Internal reference field, name badge, fine. Description field, same thing. But because it's a quantity field, I can limit how many can be sold per order. Remember, I'm doing group bookings. So I don't want everyone necessarily to order a lot, so I can limit how many for the whole order, go over my inventory, or I can set a limit per person. How many, you're allowed up to 5 Expo guides per person. Okay. This is a big one. Make sure attendees enter whole numbers, because I'm not going to sell them half a shirt or half an Expo guide if I'm using that. Just going to stick with that. Same thing with the guide, just the general audience can see it. Follow-up questions, merge codes like we saw before. All right. So what does that look like? Once again, we would not have seen an options page here if we didn't have data on that page. And that's what the different types look like. T-shirts are radio buttons. They just get one. Expo guide I cannot put in. I have to put in a whole number to work. Okay, now it doesn't have to be merchandise. If you just have one last question to ask somebody, you can do that with the single checkbox. You can also restrict or force people to select options on this page if you need to use that. But with that, that comes to the end of my demonstration of attendee info and agenda and options. I'm checking my my notes here. If there's anything I need to, anything I missed, I'm not seeing anything. So let me open this up for questions. If anyone here has questions about attendee info, questions, or agenda and options features, now's the time. You can unmute your microphone and ask away, or if you prefer, put it in the chat, and we will, or I will answer your questions now. For that matter, if you have any question about Stova, feel free to, just ask away. While I'm waiting, I'll just give you a preview of next week's masterclass. Next week, we are going to be talking about fees and payments, how to set fees for those different areas if you're going to use them. Again, we're talking about categories, sessions, and agenda options. We'll talk about how to set it up so you can accept credit card payments, how to give people discounts to your event, how to generate invoices. We'll also be talking about the look and feel of your registration site, how you can edit that and customize it for your own registration site. And we'll be talking about some of the advanced settings available on the advanced settings tab that you should be aware of and may want to use. Again, so that's next time on Master Class. Well, you're very welcome, Dana. Also, again, just to wrap up, I saw some people came in later. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered, whether they're here or not. You'll see an email tomorrow morning with a link to the video. We're also now sending out a link to a little survey that we've created. We'd like to get your feedback on how we're doing on these webinars. So give us your ideas. You should see a couple emails after this webinar is over. So if you do have questions after you leave here today, feel free to reach out to us on the Slack channel. In fact, it's a great resource for just posting questions and see what other users other users have answers to. They may have solved the same problems you are already having. Feel free to use our support site, stova.asu.edu. There are lots of how-to articles there and videos specific to ASU. Send us an email at stova@asu.edu. Happy to answer your questions that way. We can also set up some time if you just need some one-on-one time with one of us to go over your specific issues or questions with an office hour or a consultation. Lauren, if you signed up for that session before the session ran last week, you should have gotten a link, but yeah, I can double check just to send it to you again. Actually, I think we're considering opening up that or displaying that video to a wider audience. I guess we're getting lots of requests for it. So, oh, thank you, Dana. There you go. All right. Well, hearing no questions and seeing no questions in the chat for follow up, I'm going to let you all go. Get 10 minutes back to your day. So, hope you found this helpful and see you next week, perhaps. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.